"You're not welcome here," the hostess said to the black CEO. 15 minutes later, she fired the entire team. "Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to our main character. Maria Clark stepped into the luxury hotel lobby, dressed casually in a simple black t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. Her entrance was quiet, almost unnoticeable. Exactly how she planned it. There was no entourage, no flashy jewelry, no designer handbags. Just a woman walking through the lobby, minding her own business, heading to the front desk to check in. The receptionist, Jessica Hayes, barely glanced up from her computer screen as Maria approached. "Good evening," Maria said with a calm and professional tone. Offering her ID and reservation confirmation, Jessica slowly raised her eyes, scanning Maria's attire before snatching the documents from her hand. The look of skepticism was clear in her eyes, and a hint of disdain curled on her lips. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Jessica said, her voice dripping with judgment. "This isn't the type of room we reserve for people like you." Maria froze for a second, processing what had just been said. The words cut through the air like a blade. The reception area, once filled with quiet conversations and soft music, seemed to go silent in that instant. Jessica continued, her tone growing colder. "We'll need to recheck your reservation. A penthouse suite is reserved for high-profile guests. You sure you're in the right place?" Maria could feel the weight of the words, the implication that she didn't belong in this space. It was the same old story, the subtle racism that permeated so many of her experiences. But she wouldn't let it break her. With a composed look, she reached into her bag and retrieved her black credit card. One that belonged to her company, a card no one else had access to. She slid it across the desk, her fingers steady, betraying none of the frustration she felt inside. Jessica raised an eyebrow, clearly unsure of how to respond. She hesitated, then picked up the card with 2 fingers, as though afraid it might somehow stain her. "This looks strange," Jessica muttered, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Maria kept her gaze steady, her face calm. She didn't need to explain herself. She wasn't here to beg for respect. She was here because she belonged. The air grew thicker, the tension palpable. Other guests in the lobby started to take notice, sensing something wasn't right. Jessica didn't seem to care. She pressed a button on her desk, her voice sharp as she spoke into the intercom. "Security, please. We have a possible situation here. A guest trying to access a restricted suite without proper identification." Maria stood still, her posture unyielding. She knew this game. She had played it before. As she waited, she glanced around the room, noticing the other guests watching with quiet interest, some of them filming the scene. A part of her wanted to ask them to stop, but she didn't need their approval. She was about to show them why she didn't need to make a scene to win this fight. Maria wasn't just anyone. She was the CEO, the owner of this very hotel. But Jessica didn't know that yet. Maria remained calm, standing in silence, waiting for the storm to unfold. She could feel the eyes on her, but she didn't flinch. She had faced worse, and she would make sure this moment would be no different. As the seconds ticked by, Maria stood still, her expression unchanging. Jessica, now visibly uncomfortable, looked at the credit card once more, as though it might reveal some hidden secret. The tension in the room was growing thicker with each passing moment. Guests in the lobby, who had been minding their own business, were now staring, some holding up their phones, others whispering amongst themselves. Maria, however, remained calm, her demeanor betraying no sign of distress. The young woman behind the desk was clearly stalling, trying to find an excuse for the humiliation she had just tried to inflict. "I'm sorry, but this just doesn't add up," Jessica said, her voice faltering slightly. Maria didn't respond, choosing instead to glance at her watch, waiting for the inevitable moment to arrive. Moments later, another employee, Kevin, appeared from the back. He had been watching from a distance, and now he sauntered over to the desk with an air of superiority. "Is there a problem here, Jessica?" he asked, his voice laced with authority. Maria could sense the shift in power dynamics. Kevin had arrived, and it was clear he had no idea who she was. This woman, Jessica began, her words almost dripping with contempt, is trying to use a fake credit card to access a suite that's not available for just anyone. Maria finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. I don't need to prove anything to you, she said, her words cutting through the tension. But if you insist on questioning me, I suggest you check again. Jessica hesitated, clearly unsure of how to proceed. Kevin, however, was unfazed. I think you've made a mistake, he said, his voice full of judgment. He glanced at the security cameras overhead as though the proof was right there for all to see. But Maria knew better. She didn't flinch or show any signs of panic. She was in control. She wasn't here to beg for respect. She was here to take back what was rightfully hers. The silence stretched on, and as if on cue, the phone rang at the front desk. Jessica picked it up, her hand shaking ever so slightly. Yes, she answered, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. A moment passed, and Jessica's face changed as she listened. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Are you sure? She asked, her voice cracking. Maria didn't need to hear the conversation to know what was happening. It was all unfolding exactly as she had anticipated. Moments later, Jessica slowly placed the phone back on the receiver and turned to Kevin. Her face had drained of color. It's real, she stammered. She's the owner. Kevin, whose confidence had been so strong just moments before, now looked unsure. The room seemed to hold its breath as the realization hit him. Maria remained composed, but inside, a wave of satisfaction washed over her. This was the moment, the turning point. Maria's true power had been revealed, and with it came a quiet authority that no one in this room could challenge. She didn't need to raise her voice or make a scene. The truth was enough. Jessica and Kevin exchanged nervous glances, their earlier arrogance fading as they processed the truth. Maria, however, was already moving forward, a new sense of clarity in her steps. I don't need to explain myself, she said, her voice steady and unwavering. But what I do need is for you to understand one thing. No one is above the rules, not even the people who think they own everything. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, tapping a few keys. Protocol 6, she said quietly, pressing the send button. Within seconds, she received a confirmation that the process was in motion. Kevin and Jessica stood there, speechless, as the realization of their mistake began to sink in. The room, once tense and full of judgment, now felt suffocating, as if the very air had changed. I will be speaking with the board, Maria continued, her voice never rising but filled with authority. And I expect a full review of your behavior today. Jessica opened her mouth to protest, but the words never came. Maria's gaze was enough to silence her. With the weight of her position behind her, Maria turned to the rest of the guests in the lobby, who had been watching the entire scene unfold. She nodded once, acknowledging them, before walking past the stunned employees, her head held high. It was clear that she wasn't just reclaiming her space. She was making sure this never happened again. As Maria walked through the lobby, she could feel the weight of the moment hanging in the air. The realization was spreading across the room, from the front desk to the distant corners of the lobby where guests had been watching in stunned silence. The energy had shifted. What was once a scene of humiliation was now a quiet testament to power and authority. Guests had begun to murmur among themselves, some nodding in acknowledgement, while others still stood in disbelief at what had just unfolded. Maria could hear the low whispers, but she kept moving forward, her gaze fixed and steady. She could sense the uncertainty that had settled over Jessica and Kevin, the two employees who had initially tried to undermine her. It was clear now that they were out of their depth, caught in their own mistake. Maria had known from the start that they would underestimate her, that they would see her as just another guest. But now the truth had been revealed. She was the one in control. She didn't need to make a scene or raise her voice. Her silence spoke volumes and her actions spoke louder. The room seemed to shrink as she moved past the front desk, but she was unbothered by the stares or the murmurs. She had faced worse in her life, far worse. This was just another moment to prove that no matter the circumstances, she could rise above it. As Maria reached the elevator, she pressed the button, and the soft ding echoed in the empty space around her. She stepped inside and turned to face the mirrored wall. For a brief moment, she let herself breathe, her calm exterior hiding the storm of emotions that had been building up inside her for years. She had worked so hard to get to this point, to build something that was hers, only to be judged by others who saw her as less than. But today everything had changed. The door to the elevator slid shut, and Maria's reflection disappeared as she was carried upward. But her mind was still focused on the next steps. She had more work to do. She needed to ensure this never happened again. Not just here but across all of her properties. The time for passive acceptance was over. As the elevator rose higher, Maria could feel the pulse of determination coursing through her veins. She had the power to make the change. She was not just a CEO. She was the force that would drive the change in an industry that had too long turned a blind eye to the very real issues of race and class. When the elevator reached the top floor, the doors opened, and Maria stepped out into the hallway. She didn't look back, knowing that the weight of her actions would speak for themselves. She was about to make history. She was about to rewrite the rules. Maria stepped into her office, the cool, modern space a stark contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside her. The elevator doors closed behind her with a soft, reassuring sound, as if signaling the start of something new. Her hands were steady as she set her purse down on the desk, her mind already racing with the steps she needed to take next. This moment, this victory, was just the beginning. She had always known that being a Black woman in the business world meant that she would have to fight harder, prove herself more, and yet still face judgment based on nothing but appearance. But today Maria had reclaimed not just her space, but her dignity. She reached for her phone and dialed Tina, her assistant. The phone rang once, then twice, before Tina's voice came through, calm and ready. "Tina, I need you to pull up the employee files for the front desk team at Horizon Grand. I want a full review of everything, performance, complaints, the works. The time for ignoring these issues is over." There was a brief pause on the other end before Tina responded, her voice filled with determination. "Got it. I'll start on it right now." Maria hung up the phone and leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. This wasn't about just one moment, one incident. It was about the systemic issues that had been allowed to fester unchecked for too long. The fact that Jessica and Kevin had acted the way they did, that they believed they could dismiss her so easily, was proof of the deep-rooted biases in place. Maria knew that if she let this slide, if she allowed them to get away with it, it would only reinforce the idea that people like her didn't belong. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Maria glanced out of her office window, the city skyline sprawling in front of her. It was a beautiful view, one she had worked tirelessly to earn, but it also reminded her of how far she had come, and how much more there was to do. She had built her empire from the ground up, but this was just another battle in a much larger war. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from her legal team. She opened it, reading through the details quickly. Her lawyers had already started the process of reviewing the staff's actions and any previous complaints filed against them. The wheels were in motion, and Maria was ready to take action. She needed to make an example of this situation, not just for her own sake, but for the countless others who had been treated the same way and never had the chance to fight back. As she set the phone down, Maria's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She turned to see Elena, the young concierge who had stepped up earlier. "Elena, come in," Maria said, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk. Elena walked in, looking a little nervous but also determined. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did earlier," Maria said, her voice kind but firm. "It's not easy to stand up to your colleagues, especially when they're in positions of power." Elena nodded, her eyes meeting Maria's. "I couldn't just let them treat you that way. It's not right." Maria smiled slightly. "I appreciate that. I'm going to make sure this hotel runs differently moving forward. I want you to be part of that change." Elena's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and gratitude on her face. "You want me to be part of the reform?" Maria nodded. "Yes. I think you have the integrity and the drive to make a real difference here. I'm giving you a promotion. You'll be in charge of guest services from now on. I want you to help me lead this change." Elena looked stunned but grateful. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Maria stood up, extending her hand. "I know you won't." As Elena left the office, Maria sat back down, her thoughts once again turning to the bigger picture. This was just the beginning, but she was ready for whatever came next. She had made a statement today, but now it was time to back it up with real lasting change. Maria sat in her office late into the afternoon. Her mind focused on the changes she knew were coming. The events of the day had been a turning point, but they were just the beginning. She had seen the way Jessica and Kevin had treated her, how they assumed she didn't belong, and she couldn't let that kind of behavior go unchallenged. As she stared out at the city below, Maria felt a deep sense of resolve. She wasn't just going to punish the individuals involved, she was going to overhaul the culture that allowed this kind of discrimination to thrive. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced down to see a message from Tina. All employee files for Horizon Grand are ready. Full review of the front desk staff is complete. Maria tapped her phone screen, reading through the notes Tina had sent. The pattern was clear. Jessica and Kevin were not isolated cases. The hotel had a history of complaints about racial bias, especially at the front desk. The reports were scattered, brushed aside, and never taken seriously. Maria's blood boiled at the thought. She had worked hard to create a reputation of excellence, a brand built on integrity, and yet this hotel under her ownership had become a place where people like her were made to feel unwelcome. She couldn't let it stand. She tapped out a quick response to Tina. Start drafting a public statement. We are going to make this right. Immediately begin training for all staff on inclusive practices, and ensure the employees involved are removed. I want a full audit of past complaints and a clear policy on handling them moving forward. Maria set the phone down and took a deep breath. She was about to turn this situation into something that would reverberate through the entire industry. It was time for accountability, and she would lead the charge. As she thought about the next steps, the door to her office opened, and Elena walked in, a look of determination on her face. Maria, I've been thinking, Elena said, her voice steady. We need to make sure that what happened today doesn't just stay within these walls. The employees who were involved, they need to face consequences. But also the guests who witnessed it, especially those who recorded the incident, need to know that their voices matter too. Maria looked at Elena impressed. You're right, Maria said, standing up and walking over to the window. This isn't just about punishment. It's about sending a message. We have the power to lead by example, to show that silence is no longer an option. We'll put out a statement, and we'll make sure everyone knows that we're holding ourselves accountable. It's time for transparency. Elena nodded, and Maria could see the fire in her eyes. Elena had proven herself today, standing up when it mattered most, and Maria was grateful for it. I want you to help me lead the charge on this, Maria said, turning back to face her. You'll head the new team for guest services and training, but I want you to have a direct line to me. We're going to make sure this never happens again. And I want you in the front lines of that change. Elena smiled, her confidence growing. I won't let you down, Maria. Maria smiled back, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. She wasn't alone in this. She had a team, and they were going to rebuild what had been broken. As the sun began to set over the city, Maria knew this was just the start of a long journey. But it was a journey she was ready for. The days of tolerating discrimination in silence were over. Maria wasn't just going to change the hotel. She was going to change the industry. She would be the leader who made the world see that people like her belonged everywhere. The fight had just begun, and she was ready to take it to the next level. Maria stood in the middle of her office, the weight of the day pressing heavily on her shoulders. The steps she had already taken were important, but they were just the beginning. She knew the hotel needed to change, and not just in small ways. This had to be a complete overhaul. No more silence. No more brushing issues under the rug. As the evening drew closer, she stared out of the window, watching the city's lights begin to flicker on, one by one. The view was as magnificent as ever, but it was no longer just a symbol of her success. It was a reminder of the work she had ahead of her. The power she held wasn't just about her position. It was about her ability to make the right changes, to shift the culture, and to be the voice for the people who had been ignored for too long. Her phone buzzed on her desk, pulling her from her thoughts. She picked it up and saw that Tina had sent over the first draft of the public statement. Maria opened the document and began to read. It was everything she had hoped for: clear, strong, and unapologetic. The message was simple. Discrimination would not be tolerated, and the hotel would be making immediate changes to ensure it never happened again. Maria smiled to herself, feeling the familiar rush of determination. She quickly typed a response to Tina, instructing her to finalize the statement and prepare it for release by the end of the night. This was the start of something bigger than just one incident. It was a shift in the way the entire company operated. As she hit send, her mind raced through the next steps. She needed to meet with the hotel's legal team to ensure all complaints were being handled properly and that policies were being updated to reflect the changes she wanted to make. She was no longer just managing a business. She was leading a movement. The thought of it sent a spark of excitement through her. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Elena. Maria, the staff training is scheduled for tomorrow. I've already spoken with the team and lined up the resources. We're ready to get started. Maria's smile widened. Elena had proven herself time and time again, and now she would be part of the very change Maria was creating. Perfect, Maria typed back. Make sure to include a session on unconscious bias. I want every employee to understand how important this is, from the top down. She knew that real change would only come when the people working at the hotel understood the importance of respect and inclusion. Not just for a few but for everyone. As Maria set the phone down, she felt a sense of calm. There was so much more to be done, but she knew she was on the right path. She would make sure that every guest who walked into this hotel, no matter their background, would feel welcome. No exceptions. The sun was now dipping below the horizon, casting an orange glow across the city. Maria took a deep breath, stood up from her desk and walked over to the window. For the first time in a long while she felt at peace. She was ready for the next chapter. The battle she had started today was one she knew she had to fight, and it was a battle she intended to win. The next morning Maria arrived at the hotel early, determined to set things in motion. She walked through the front doors, now filled with an energy that was both calm and commanding. Elena was already there, meeting with the training team. Maria could hear their voices from the hallway as she approached. Elena stood in front of a small group of employees, her voice steady and authoritative as she addressed them. We are about to make history here, she said, her words carrying weight. And the change starts with each of us. No one is above learning, and we will all work together to ensure this place becomes one that truly values inclusion and respect. Maria smiled, hearing Elena's conviction. It was exactly what she needed to hear. She walked into the room and everyone turned toward her. There was a moment of silence, as if the team was waiting for some signal. Maria nodded at Elena and then addressed the group. Good morning, Maria began, her voice strong but calm. You've all been handpicked to help make this change happen. The world is watching, and we need to prove that we not only understand what happened, but that we will never let it happen again. From this moment forward, we will lead by example. She paused, making sure each of them was absorbing her words. We are not just in the business of hospitality. We are in the business of humanity. Every guest that walks through our doors should feel seen, heard, and respected. That is non-negotiable. I don't care what they wear or where they come from. They deserve respect. Maria looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each employee. She could see the mix of emotions. Some were uncertain, others already reflecting on their own actions, but they were all listening. She knew this was the first step toward real change. This is about more than just policies, she continued. This is about our values, our integrity, and our duty to ensure that no one, no matter their background, feels like they don't belong here. Today we begin the work of fixing what was broken, and I'm asking all of you to be part of that. Elena stepped forward, her voice ringing out with newfound confidence. We've already made the necessary changes to our training programs. Today's session will focus on unconscious bias, creating a safe environment for all guests, and holding ourselves accountable to these standards. Maria nodded in approval. Elena had put together a comprehensive plan, one that would ensure the hotel staff was fully equipped to handle the responsibility that came with their role. I'll be here every step of the way, Maria said, her gaze sweeping across the room. And if any of you feel unsure or need help understanding what we're working toward, don't hesitate to ask. We are all in this together. This isn't just about today. It's about the future. The energy in the room shifted as Maria finished speaking. She could feel the commitment in the air, the understanding that something significant was about to unfold. She turned and walked out of the room, but as she passed through the lobby she paused. She looked around, imagining what it would be like when the changes were fully implemented, when everyone who walked through those doors felt the difference. She was determined to see it through no matter the cost. As the morning sun poured through the windows, Maria felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was her moment to leave a legacy, not just as a CEO but as a leader who had the courage to stand up, to make change, and to reshape the future of her industry. With each step she took, she knew she was not just leading a company. She was leading a revolution in hospitality. Weeks passed, and the transformation at Horizon Grand Hotel was unfolding just as Maria had envisioned. The employees, once skeptical, were now embracing the change, participating in the new training programs with genuine interest. Elena had proven herself a natural leader, guiding the team with a newfound sense of purpose. Each session focused not just on policies but on personal reflection, how to recognize and confront unconscious bias, how to treat every guest as if they belonged, regardless of their background or appearance. The shift was subtle at first, small moments of understanding and growth happening behind the scenes, but the results were beginning to show. Maria had been to the hotel several times, each visit reinforcing her belief that this was just the beginning. As she walked through the lobby one afternoon, she noticed the difference in the air. The tension that had once hovered, unspoken but palpable, was gone. Now the staff greeted guests with genuine warmth, their smiles more authentic. There was a calm confidence in the way they interacted with visitors, as if they understood the responsibility they carried. But Maria knew the real test had yet to come. It wasn't just about changing the staff's attitudes. It was about ensuring the long-term sustainability of this new culture. As she made her way toward the front desk, she saw Jessica, the former receptionist, working with a colleague. Jessica looked up and caught Maria's eye, a flash of recognition crossing her face. There was no defensiveness, no discomfort in the exchange, just a simple acknowledgement of the changes that had been made. Maria nodded at her, a silent understanding passing between them. She knew that Jessica had been part of the problem, but now there was a sense that she was trying to make amends. As Maria approached the desk, Elena stepped forward. "Everything's going well, Maria," she said with a smile. "The staff is really starting to understand what this is all about. We're getting great feedback from the guests, and there's a noticeable shift in the energy around here." Maria smiled back, feeling a sense of pride. "I knew we could do it. But we're not done yet. This is just the first step. We need to make sure this becomes part of the culture, not just a phase." Elena's expression turned serious. "We're working on it. The next phase is making sure our training is ongoing, not just a one-time thing. We're developing a mentorship program for new staff too, so the values we're building here get passed on." Maria nodded in approval. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear. This has to be a continuous process. We can't afford to get complacent." She looked around, her gaze sweeping across the lobby. "I'm proud of what we've accomplished here. But we're not stopping until this place is a model for hospitality, for inclusivity, for respect, for everyone." Elena smiled. "We're getting there, Maria. One step at a time." Maria took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything she had worked for. The hotel was no longer just a business. It was a reflection of the values she stood for. And she wasn't going to let those values slip away. As she left the lobby, Maria felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced before. The change was real, and she was ready to take on whatever came next, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, not just for Horizon Grand, but for the entire hospitality industry. Months had passed since Maria had set the wheels in motion, and Horizon Grand Hotel was now a place transformed. The work was not finished, but the progress was undeniable. Guests walked in with a sense of ease, knowing they would be treated with dignity. The staff had embraced the changes fully, and the atmosphere in the hotel had shifted from one of subtle discomfort to one of open warmth and professionalism. Maria, having led the charge, had kept a watchful eye on every detail. She had remained steadfast, knowing that the true measure of success was not in quick wins, but in the sustainable growth of values that she had instilled. One late afternoon, Maria stood at the top of the grand staircase, overlooking the lobby. She could see Elena, now the general manager, moving gracefully among the staff, checking in on their progress, guiding them with a gentle yet firm hand. It had been a tough journey, but Maria knew Elena was exactly the leader this hotel needed. Maria's heart swelled with pride. This was the result of hard work, conviction, and a deep belief in the power of change. A sudden voice interrupted her thoughts. "You've built something remarkable here." Maria turned to see Tina, her assistant, standing by her side with a broad smile. Maria returned the smile. "It's a team effort, but we've come a long way. I'm proud of how far we've come." Tina nodded in agreement. "The feedback from the guests is incredible. They're noticing the difference. But the real success story is how the staff has transformed. They understand the vision now." Maria took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything she had worked for. "I know. This isn't just about policies and training. It's about creating a space where people feel like they belong, where respect is non-negotiable. And that's what we've done." As she spoke, her phone buzzed with a new message. She picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was an update from the legal team, confirming that the new policies had been fully implemented across all branches of her hospitality group. The audit was complete, and all complaints had been addressed, with new measures in place to ensure they would not happen again. Maria's smile deepened. This was what success looked like. It wasn't just about making a profit, it was about creating a legacy that was grounded in respect, inclusion, and fairness. She turned back to Tina. "The work isn't over yet," Maria said, her voice steady. "But we've set the foundation. And that's where real change begins." Tina nodded. "What's next for you?" Maria paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the lobby once more. The vision she had for this hotel, for this industry, was slowly becoming a reality. But she wasn't done. "Next," she said, "we make sure this is the standard. We make sure every hotel, every business follows the same path. I'm not stopping until equality is the baseline, not the exception." Maria felt a sense of calm settle over her. She knew her journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her purpose in a way that was deeply fulfilling. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the lobby. As Maria took one last look, she realized that she had already started something much bigger than just this hotel. She was leading a revolution in an industry that needed it. And she was just getting started.